Porsche's latest news shocks the entire car market. This is way worse than they could have imagined.
So I actually came across this video yesterday. Porsche's latest news shocks the car market. And this is way worse than I thought. This is from Easy Car Buying. And I kind of knew, I had an idea of what this latest news shocking the car market was going to be, given the fact that I had just previously visited my local Porsche dealership here in Destin, Florida. And we had a conversation, we had a chat, and they kind of filled me in on what was happening and what was going on. But I was really interested and intrigued on how Easy Car Buying was going to deliver this information. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out the way in which he did it actually got me thinking about a lot of different things when it comes to Porsche that I wanted to share with other people interested in Porsche, or perhaps maybe not interested in Porsche anymore, which sadly I have to consider myself included in that group, in that category. And despite me having such a strong desire to want to continue on with the brand, I can't afford it. And ultimately have decided to move on and move away from Porsche, and ironically to an American car company. And so I just want to give you my take, my reaction to this video, the statements made, and I'd love to know what you guys think about it. If you are perhaps maybe in a similar boat, similar category, have similar thoughts and opinions, or differing. So what I'll do is I'll play you guys a few portions, snippets, clips from Easy Car Buying's video, and then we're just going to talk about it. We're just going to chat. We're going to discuss the future of Porsche, whether it be from a brand perspective or personal perspective. And this is from someone who is a huge fan of the brand, or at least was.
When you look at the inventory, they have lots of inventory sitting, piling up. But part of the problem is Porsche, as well as VAG Group, were some of the first ones to get on the wagon with trying to sell a lot of electric vehicles. Like these particular units right here, we have Macans, and they were going pure EV.
I absolutely love my Porsche Macan and was genuinely excited to see what the next generation would bring from Porsche. But it was a huge disappointment from a styling perspective, and more importantly, a drivetrain perspective. I don't want an EV.
But that was up until recently, where they had heard that nobody was really looking for EVs. Sales were drastically down for Volkswagen, and Porsche was following suit. As the VAG Group, they knew that the writing was on the wall. They had to slow the transition into electrification because their sales were suffering.
And especially not a Porsche EV. Too soon. Not proven. Too many downsides. And I don't want to, amplify a potential issue or problem here that may not necessarily truly exist. But I do remember early on at my local Porsche dealer, seeing some of the Taycans sitting there for very long periods of time, waiting for batteries, waiting for work, waiting. I mean, it's just, it didn't give me a warm and fuzzy. It didn't.
Now, for the Porsche 911 fans, they know that a lot of the value stays with the cars. These cars are extremely high priced, but even if there's a tariff that somehow passes through, they know the residual value, particularly on coupes like the 911 like this, are always sort of there.
And to say a 911 is extremely high priced is a bit of an understatement at this point. And when you factor in all the nannies, uninspiring push button start for the 992.2 and the all digital gauge cluster, well, yeah, it's a no for me, dog. I think it's extremely ironic as I'm rewatching this and finalizing the edit here that I'm actually headed to Porsche of Mobile later on today, but not so much to check out a Porsche, but to check out the American made competitor. Okay. You guys could probably check their inventory now and narrow down what that could be. However, at the same time, there is a used 2023 992 Carrera S. Granted, I think it's 150, 160,000 for what it is. And I do think that is actually the cutoff before we lose the all digital dash. But that's the crazy part about it. It's like, I'm okay with a digital dash. In fact, I really like the digital dash in the Taycan. I think it's really cool. I'm okay with the all digital dash in the American made brand competitor that I'm considering buying. What I'm not okay with is losing my analog tack, my analog dash component of the 992 that was available that is now no more. I don't know why. I cannot agree with that. I just don't agree with it.
So you're not wasting all your money. Even with consumers buying the 911, they realize that later on a lot of the values come back. And while they're not the cheapest cars to maintain, own, or operate, or insure, or any of that, they're a premium car, and certainly we've seen the prices rise recently. And a lot of that is partially due to inflation. A lot of that is partially trying to recuperate everything else they're doing within the organization on the EV side. But if you looked at the pricing on the latest 911, it's getting out of hand.
The new Carrera starts at 130,000 United States dollars.
They've jacked prices up on the GTS, the 911, just about every Carrera and Turbo S. You can't even get a GT3 even if you have the money.
All right, and this one's eye-opening, or at least it was for me. And the saying, life isn't fair, ironic to think, but it's all relative when you put it into perspective. Hear me out. Even if you have the money, you may not be able to get a GT3, or at least a new allocation, that is.
So it's a hard car to come by, and that's why prices are very, very high. It's a very popular model.
And I've done plenty of searches, okay? I've done plenty of searches, and the secondary market still has me in the 120K to 150K range for a 992.1 spec with Sport Chrono from a reputable seller. And although there isn't any mention in this video from what I remember about 718s, I do consider those to be a good alternative from the negatives and cons side in perspective, being price or value, okay? They aren't cheap, and what I would want is a GTS 4-liter or GT4, and it just kind of rubs me the wrong way knowing my limitations on power and modifications for more. Pretty much capped, limited, finite. And yes, Turbo does instantly give a better platform, in theory, for upgrades, for more power, for more boost, for quicker 0 to 60s and quarter miles and higher top speeds, but which is why a 991.2 or 992.1 would be ideal. But let's be honest, I don't think anybody really likes the way a 718 4-banger turbo actually sounds.
Is it going to hurt the brand? Sure. The customers are going to always pay a little bit more, and we're starting to see the price increases now. One model that hasn't done all that well for Porsche, though, is the Taycan. We're talking about some of the EVs in the Porsche world. You know, this is the same vehicle as Audi and the Audi e-tron GT, more or less the same platform, similar drives. And the unfortunate part is there are customers that will buy these. There are customers that have the money, and there's customers that really need to have them.
Hey, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those customers, and I think that the Taycan is actually sexy as hell, and I would love to see it replace the Panamera, but it needs to have a sick drivetrain that really inspires excitement just to turn the key.
Done, gorgeous vehicles, but the secondary market has been absolutely devastating on Taycans. There's been people that have gone out, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars only to find out trade-in at 2 or 3 years later, they're only offered up a 30-35% of their original value.
And that was somewhat attractive or enticing for me because I was looking at 6-figure sticker Taycans that are now being offered up with asking prices in the 50s and 60s. And I'm cool with buying used and letting someone else absorb the huge depreciation hit. Long periods of downtime without the car and the inevitable future of a net zero-sum value once all the life has been squeezed out of the battery cells, well, it fell to the bottom of my list.
And vehicles like this have been the bane of Porsche's existence in recent months, because with Porsche's push to go pure EV, they've transformed one of their most popular models, the Macan. That's right, we have a Porsche Macan, but this one here specifically is electric. You'll notice simply by that badge on there, and of course it's an interesting looking vehicle, but here they have quite a few lined up, as you'll notice, quite a few here that aren't selling.
And I hate to say it, but the constant push by sales advisors and Porsche brand ambassadors to get me into a Macan EV every time I walked into the dealership is annoying, or was. It feels less like they know me as a customer and a fan of the brand and more of just a cow that they can prod cash out of to buy whatever junk that they slap a Porsche emblem on. Not gonna happen.
A lot of buyers are not interested in these vehicles. You can tell also a giveaway, look at the front, there is no grille. I mean, you get the big red calipers, you get these different style of wheels. You'll notice they're more of a filled in space or a blank right there. But right here we have another one. This is a Macan 4S, and you'll notice very different wheels on this one. Different detailing on the side. This one is also electric. So they're doing different details. They give you different wheel packages. And right here, I like these wheels actually, but here's another EV by Porsche. As you can see, I like these wheels. They're a little bit different, kind of unique from the other ones.
And if we're being honest here, the wheels on that Macan remind me of a 5th gen Camaro. Am I the only one who sees that? I know I can't be the only one who sees that, right?
But if we look on the sticker, these are 2024s right there. So they're clearly not even able to sell the 24s and beyond.
The difficulty selling the 2024 Macan electric variant, it should tell you something. And Porsche did have the bright idea of offering ICE versions for 2024 alongside the EV when they first rolled out. Too bad some exec pulled the plug on that idea.
These would be probably the first generation of electric Macans that came out to the market. And we scan up here, we see another, this one's a 2025 right there, and I believe this one is as well. But Porsche sadly has reported the first quarter of 2025, and they're down globally by 8%. That is a significant hit. So now they're pushing really hard to try to get customers back in the door.
But are they really though? Are they really? Is Porsche really trying to get customers back in the door? Or is Porsche just trying to be like every other automaker out there? Porsche's big idea on the road to 20 may come up short now with an 8% drop already in the first quarter for sales.
But a big part of that is the declined sales in Europe as well as China. With incentives like the 2025 Macan.
Now, I've got an immediate complaint about this, and this should say a lot about the brand from the perspective of offering this marketing, this financing incentive by doing so with the previous Macan body style. You see what I'm saying? And so obviously I think Porsche has, you know, they've read the room and they understand that no one really wants the new Macan, and it's not iconic and it's not going to catch anybody's attention driving by on a billboard. But sadly, again, what customers are Porsche trying to attract? Because if I see that sign, I'm thinking, okay, did the 95B.2 return? Is it back? Or the 95B, whichever model, is it back? Is that body style and that shape, has it returned? Did Porsche come to their senses? Only to realize that no, it's actually the new Macan, which, you know, probably should say Macan EV on the sign. And yeah, we're just offering a lease incentive on that, for which I then leave the dealership extremely disappointed. And I don't, and that's just me. I don't know how that's going to affect other people.
Lease from 5.99%, it's clear that they're pushing to try to promote these vehicles. But the Porsche Taycan of the 2025 is getting even better rate at 4.99%. But cars like the Porsche 911 GT3 have never had problems selling. I like this particular unit. This is a matte silver finish. I haven't seen anything like this before. What a stunning color combination. But these cars here are commanding top dollar, and these are the cars that are bringing in the dollars and the bucks for Porsche.
And yes, the 992 GT3 is stunning, but I just don't see myself forking over the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars required just to be in the club.
But more great lease rates here for the 25 Cayenne for 3.99%. as well as a Macan electric vehicle leased from 4.99%. Lots of incentives, clear indication they're pushing hard, but the product's not really moving. So Porsche and the VAG group are trying to adapt and flex to the market demands. And vehicles like the Taycan, while they are selling, a lot of people just simply don't want them on the used market. And of course, the secondary pricing and values are in the tank. Vehicles like this, we're seeing a lot of these are popular, and that's ultimately what brought Porsche out of the loop. They had a couple times in history where they struggled making sales. One of them, of course, they introduced the Cayenne, which was one of the lifesavers for the brand. Another one was the Porsche Boxster, which they introduced way back many moons ago, back in 1997. They always had those special vehicles that brought themselves out of harm's way.
When exactly did Porsche lose sight of what made their customers tick? More importantly, buy. When did Porsche lose their focus and fall off track just by chasing profit and possibly bad trends like EV?
Porsche has had struggles throughout the years, time and time again, and they've always had to adapt and create something that's affordable and popular. Well, affordable was the Boxster when people could not afford a 911, and practical when the entire industry was going towards SUVs, sport utility vehicles. Porsche had to represent and do something of their own to make sure that they were still in the game.
And so whether it's affordable and popular or affordable and practical, what exactly would fit that description now? If we were to visit a Porsche dealership or browse their website wanting to build a new car or SUV.
Because they knew that they could not survive alone on just selling Porsche 911s. And while the true brand loyalists will always have a 911 in their garage, many people now are starting to look at other options from Porsche.
And I guess you can exclude me from the brand loyalist category because I do not have a 911 in my garage and may never at this point. Oh, and by the way, I don't remember if the Cayman or Boxster is mentioned again in this video, but if not, it's for good reason. Because based on what I've been told, the 718 platform or the Boxster or Cayman will be discontinued. Even though I thought it would be the next to meet its demise by way of electrification, I was shocked to find out Porsche is supposedly pulling the plug on the very same cars that helped save the brand from ultimate collapse. I don't know if I would call this interesting or better yet ironic, but I can say that I feel like the elimination of these two cars in either a hardtop or convertible spec doesn't have anything to do with true fans and drivers wanting them, but instead the fact that the drivetrains themselves have made them boring and extremely undesirable. Even a GTS 4-liter or a GT4 have their downsides, like a second gear so long that you have to set a reminder to shift at some point. But besides that, any variant that would get people excited, like myself, is going to cost over $100K. And it's still missing that something special to justify the price, if you know what I mean.
So part of the pain that Porsche was experiencing as well when they last year announced that they were going to go full transition with their Macans and go pure EV. As you can see, I've already showed you some of the Macans. These are all electric, but customers were not loving it, and it seemed like they were throwing all of their eggs into that EV basket. Where did their internal combustion vehicles go? Well, most people know that Porsche lovers and enthusiasts are some of the most passionate car drivers on the planet. And when there was announcements of going hybrid in a 911, whoa, there was people upset about that. They currently have that though.
And yes, the 911 GTS is somewhat an electric hybrid, but I'm not upset about that. I just can't afford one.
But even more importantly, with the Macan, when they said they were going to entirely scrap the internal combustion engine and only bring in an electric version of the Macan, whoa, all bets were off. That's what triggered. The market was screaming to the brand, you better bring back the internal combustion engine, and Porsche reacted. And
this is the part of Easy Car Buying's video where he breaks the shocking latest news from Porsche.
Of course, they've always been good at doing that throughout history, reacting to what the customer and what the market wants, and so they've done that. So as a result, Porsche has announced that they're likely going to bring in a revamped Macan that has the capability to put an internal combustion engine. Of course, it's more or less the same chassis. It's just a matter of readapting engine mounts and basically dropping it in. But it's more or less on the same platform, so it'd be an easy fix. Couple of options, electric and internal combustion. The 911, that's also going to be a conversation piece, but for now, the flat six is still in business. So for those who love the 911, Fret not, at least for the time being. Even with a hybrid, it's a small hybrid assist and generally still holds on to that wonderful flat six internal combustion drivetrain. So it's proof that the entire market is now impacted both by tariffs as well as cost of living crisis. A lot of people are struggling to make ends meet. Now, most people are going to argue, hey, if you can afford a Porsche, you're not going to struggle. Well, the fact is that could be the difference between driving one and not driving one. It's that simple.
It is that simple. And that's where I find myself right now. I will continue to drive the Porsche, the one that I currently have, but I don't see myself buying a new Porsche in the future. Now, I did negotiate a deal over the weekend, and I hope to pick up my new car this coming Friday or Saturday. And yeah, it's a direct competitor to the 911. And if you guys want to take a guess at what it could possibly be, well, the engine's behind me. It's rear wheel drive, and the 0 to 60 is in the 2s. Oh yeah. And it's got a pretty quick shifting DCT as well. I can also remove the roof in a Targa-like fashion, granted not fully automated, but definitely for far less money than Porsche would want for a 911 Targa. And to be honest with you guys, I can't wait to get it. And I can't wait to show it to you all. And I'm very excited, even if it doesn't necessarily show on my face all the time, but it'll be there. Once I have the vehicle in my possession, the keys in my hand, and I'm driving it, yeah, then you'll see.
And at the end of the day, a lot of these manufacturers are trying to somehow increase profits year over year, month over month, but at the same token, still maintain the level of sales.
And there's a point when you reach diminishing returns, okay? And sadly, I don't think Porsche is even profiting off the insane dealer allocations and donations. So when you add that on top of Porsche raising prices year over year, there just comes a point where the average buyer who can kind of sort of afford to pay to play the game has to fold and move on. And once you lose a customer, it can be very hard to get them back.
I'm not sure they can have both. I'd like to hear your thoughts below. Whether you think Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, that entire group can make it through this next 12 months.
Simple answer, yes. I don't even think brands like Nissan will crash in the next 12 months. But if we stretch this out to 24 months, then I would say they should be worried if they don't correct course.